Greetings and salutations, folks, and welcome once again, as always, to another helping of Mr H's Hot Pot. You join me today out for an early morning bimble. I'm up at Sparrows Fort, as I like to say. It's currently about 8 o'clock in the morning, and it's shaping up to be a nice day. Now, a quick word before I go any further regarding the old sunglasses. Now, I'm not wearing these today out of vanity or trying to look cool or anything like that. It's not a new look for Mr H. Simply, I'm out in the fields, and as a lot of you know, Mr H does suffer from hay fever. And wearing sunglasses, when you're out in a place like this where there's lots of pollen floating about, it does help to protect the old eyes. So I'm wearing them out of necessity, not out of trying to look cool, honestly. Anyway, on to today's subject matter. I'm currently making my way through the fields of Upholland, which is a little village not too far away from my hometown of Wigan, and it lies just on the border between Greater Manchester and West Lancashire. And I've come here today to document and take a look at 3 brick structures that rise out of the ground here in the fields of Upholland. And I've been meaning to do this for a while, Hot Potters, but simply I haven't got round to it. But today is the day, and I'm bringing you guys along for the ride. Now, these curious structures that we're going to be taking a look at and documenting today are known locally as the pepper pots, which sort of conjures up the image of folk groups, beards and jumpers and real ale drinking and things like that. But it's nothing to do with that, as you'll find out when we get closer to them. But why were they built, and what are the purpose? Well, that's what we're going to be finding out in a moment, Hot Potters. So join me in a short while when I arrive at the first of the pepper pots, and we'll take a closer look at them, shall we? And here we are, Hot Potters. This, in front of us, is one of the 3 structures here in Upholland that are known locally as the pepper pots, due to the shape mainly, and it's easy to see why. But what are they, and why are they here? Well, beneath our feet lies Upholland Tunnel, which is located between Upholland and Orrell railway stations, on the Wigan to Kirkby branch line. The tunnel is 887 metres in length, or just over half a mile in old money. And the 3 pepper pots we'll be taking a look at today are actually ventilation shafts, originally built to allow the smoke and steam from steam locomotives to escape the tunnel back in the day. And we are currently heading in the direction towards Upholland Station, or the Western Portal to give it its correct name. Now, for some reason, Network Rail, who maintain these ventilation shafts, have numbered them 1 to 3 heading towards Orrell Station, which is in the opposite direction to that which we are walking in. So we are now looking at number 3, with number 2 just in the distance there, and number 1 hidden beyond that. Now, before I started this video, I visited the Orrell Station end of the tunnel, or the Eastern Portal, to take a look at the tunnel from there. So I'll put that footage in for you now, and we'll take a look at the entrance to this tunnel, or one of the entrances to this tunnel, and we'll see what this tunnel looks like from there. And here we are, folks, at the Eastern Portal of the Upholland Tunnel, which, as you can see, is rather ornate and very Victorian in style. And it's only recently, in March 2020, that Network Rail replaced the track and track beds in there at a cost of £1 million as part of the Great North Rail project that saw the first major overhaul of this tunnel since it was built. Now, I'm fortunate enough to have a photograph of the tunnel all lit up at night when the tracks were being replaced, which I'll put in for you now and we'll quickly take a look at before returning back to the pepper pots. And this is that photograph of the tunnel all lit up at night, and it gives us a unique look inside the tunnel without us having to actually go down there and get our collars felt for trespassing. And it's very impressive, folks, I must admit. As always, as a former tradesman myself, I'm in total awe of the craftsmanship of the men who built these structures and their attention to detail, which still sees them going strong in the 21st century. Anyway, we'll leave the Eastern Portal now and return back to the pepper pots. So this is, according to Network Rail at least, ventilation shaft number 3. And despite appearances, it's probably the one in the poorest condition of the 3, because as you can see, it has been fitted with a set of iron bands at some point of the type so favoured by the late great Fred Dibner when he was repairing chimneys. And the purpose of those iron bands is to try and prevent the structure from splitting, then falling apart. And it's a bit like putting a band of sticky tape around the outside of a cracked cup to keep all the pieces in place. I'm also going to hazard a guess here, Hot Potters, that originally these ventilation shafts were completely open at the top, and the 3 courses of brickwork above that stonework ring and the concrete capping on top were added much later when steam locomotives were no longer being used and the tunnel did not need to be as well ventilated as it once did. However, it is just a guess, so if anyone out there watching this video can remember the pepper pots without the tops and can confirm my theory about them, then please leave me a comment below. Now, I came on a recce to take a look at this ventilation shaft yesterday with little Toby James and Mrs H, and we brought along with us a drone to try and see if we could get any footage of what these look like from above. Now, we did manage to get a little bit of footage, and I'll put that in for you now, and then we'll carry on with our bimble and move on to ventilation shaft number 2. Okay folks, well, I hope you enjoyed that little bit of drone footage that myself and little Toby James took yesterday when we was up here with Mrs H doing a recce for this video. They are quite good drones because it does give you a unique opportunity to see some of these structures from above, and you get to see some shots that normally you wouldn't get to see. Now, hopefully I'll improve with the old drone as things start moving forward. It's the first time I've used it really, and not bad for a first attempt really. Anyway, as we make our way now to ventilation shaft number 2, I'll give you a little bit of history on the tunnel that it serves, that runs beneath our feet. And it was built in 1848 for the then Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway. And the idea of it was, I think, to get over the gradient here, because it is quite high up. There is a little bit of wind here today, and I am fighting the wind with this video, but there's a number of reasons why they used to build tunnels back in the day. The first was to obviously get over a steep gradient that the steam engines wouldn't have been able to get over back in the day, and sometimes they used to build tunnels because the landowner didn't want to see steam trains moving across his or her land. Now, for us here in the 21st century, we look back on steam trains as part of quintessential British life, don't we? But then they was looking at it as really these big mechanical beasts that was thundering across their land was an eyesore, but there was a necessity. A bit like we look at mobile phone towers really. You know, they're there, but they're a necessary evil really, but they're not very nice to look at. So I wonder if in years to come people will be putting preservation orders on mobile phone towers. There's something to think about. Anyway, we're now approaching ventilation shaft number 2, so once again I'll whip the camera around and we'll take a closer look at it, because we'll be right at the side of this one. Well, we've now made it to ventilation shaft number 2, which is just inside this farmer's field here. Sadly, access is a bit limited with this one, so we'll take a brief look at it and then we'll make our way down this footpath here and onto ventilation shaft number 1, which with a bit of luck we should be able to walk all the way around. But before we do, let's take a look at this one. And once again, there's that decorative brickwork and concrete capping at the top of the shaft to help ventilate the tunnel below. And from the drone footage that I showed you earlier, we now know that there are 2 square holes up there, which all adds to the pepper pot nickname of these structures. Then as I slowly pan the camera down, you can see that there's been a lot of remedial work done to this one over the years. And at the bottom it appears to be more patching than original brickwork, which will have weakened the structure overall. Sadly, whoever has patched the brickwork up has used the wrong size of bricks, as there are different sizes of bricks, believe it or not, hot potters, for anyone out there who doesn't know. And Victorian era structures like this one will have been built using the old imperial sized bricks, which are slightly larger than the modern day metric sized bricks. And what starts to happen when a brickie tries to match imperial brickwork up using metric sized bricks is that eventually, over a number of courses, they end up being out of sync with the original brickwork. Then they find themselves having to try and fudge the final course any way they can. This doesn't look good on Facebook like this, to be honest, and I'd have been kicked off site back in the day for turning out rubbish like this, but somebody has managed to get away with it. Anyway, let's make our way over to ventilation shaft number 1 now, which is just down this footpath and over there in the distance. So what, Potters, one short bimble later, and here we are at ventilation shaft number 1, which as you can see is exactly the same as the other two that we have looked at. But the good news is that we are able to walk all the way around this one unrestricted. So, without further ado, let's do just that, shall we? Now I've no idea what those little holes that look like slits are for part way up the wall there, and the other two ventilation shafts also have them in roughly the same places, but they don't appear to be original to the structures, although they do seem purposefully placed. And then at the bottom there we have some more poor quality remedial brickwork. And this is the number that Network Rail have hastily painted on the side of this ventilation shaft, designating it as number 1, which is starting to fade now. Then as I pan the camera back up to the top, we can see more patching to the brickwork has taken place on this side, and it looks like it's also in need of some repointing work. Now on this side of the ventilation shaft, the lower portion appears to have been patched and repatched, resulting in this large crack here, which is obviously of some concern as whoever has last inspected it has placed a dated cement seal over the crack, which I'll try and get a closer look at for you now. So the date this seal was placed here is obviously the 24th of April 2021, and the idea of the seal is, I should imagine, to keep returning back at regular intervals to inspect the seal, and if it is found to be broken then they will know that the crack is worsening and how quickly it is spreading. However, Hot Potters, today is the 27th of January 2022 as I'm making this video, so 9 months on and it's still intact, which would indicate that the crack for now at least is dormant. And as I slowly pan down this side of the ventilation shaft, you can see that this is probably in the best condition of all, with very little patching being done to this side, and that's probably due to this side being shielded from the weather. Anyway folks, I'm going to make my way over to the western portal and the Upholland station end of the tunnel and take a quick look at the other entrance to this tunnel before wrapping this one up. And finally, Hot Potters, here we are at the western portal of the tunnel, with Upholland railway station just behind me. And this is our final stop of the day, if you'll pardon the pun, before wrapping this one up. Over in the distance there you can just see ventilation shaft number 1, where we've just been, rising out of the top of the tunnel like a tall chimney. And this tunnel entrance isn't as ornate as the eastern portal for some reason, and I've no idea why the two don't match up. You should expect them to, with them both being part of the same thing really. But we are able to see all the way through the tunnel from this side, which you can't from the other end due to the angle. And apparently this tunnel is the only major structure on this line from Wigan to Kirby, and it was built at the highest point of the line to enable the steam locomotives of the day to bypass the gradient, as they wasn't as powerful as today's modern locomotives. Anyway folks, I'm going to whip the camera around now and wrap this one up, I think. Okay folks, well that'll just about do it for today. Sadly, we're at the end of today's little adventure. I hope you've enjoyed today's video and taking a look at the pepper pots here in Upholland. Unfortunately, the wind's been horrendous today. It's not been the best day for filming, but hopefully it hasn't spoilt your enjoyment too much. Anyway, I'm out of here now. I'm going to get back and try and edit this video up, ready for your edification. So, until the next time, from myself, Mr. H, as always, it is bye-bye for now.